Max Orr, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
The Punt Road Premiership exodus has continued. Daniel Rioli is joining his premiership coach at the Gold Coast Suns, while the Tigers have got to fill the void of their reigning best and fairest. What does it mean for these two clubs? And for AFL Fantasy, SuperCoach, Dream Team and Keeper coaches, what does it mean for us in fantasy footy in 2025? We'll discuss that on this episode. It's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you are well, and I trust you're enjoying this series as we look through every single player that moves clubs during the trade and free agency period. Over the past couple of years, Daniel Rioli has really re-energised himself as a footballer, and clearly, by being awarded Richmond's best and fairest this year, he has elevated his game to arguably his career best heights. He started off as a small, crafty forward that added some pressure in that Richmond chaos ball movement that saw them have a dynasty of 3 premierships, and in fact, one of them, they don't even make it to a grand final without his preliminary final heroics. I think it was 5 or 6 goals he kicked in that game, and it was just absolutely a presence inside that Richmond forward structure and that forward game style. So he's a very, very capable small and pressure forward. I don't think that's where he's going to be playing, though, and we'll talk about what it means for Gold Coast in a moment. But for Richmond, he's reinvigorated himself as a run and carry rebound defender. They use that real elite turn of speed over that first 10 to 20 metres to really help this club get the ball outside of their defensive 50, and then used his skill to not only set up opportunities to release pressure out of D50, but also seen him do some really nice work with some inside forward 50 entries as well. I wasn't surprised to see him winning Richmond's best and fairest, and he really has become quite a damaging halfback player for the Tigers. It's going to be hard for them to replicate him. It probably does mean a player like a Jayden Short, who stayed at the club and one of these few premiership heroes that are sticking around. It really does need Adam Uze to put all their chips into this player. Now, they've got some guys that could play some additional halfback and rebound. They're going to have to keep giving kids opportunities. I like Banks as an option back through there. Ralph Smith at times has shown he can play through that spot. But if they're going to need someone with experience, speed, and skill to really help them through this rebuild, to stem the bleeding, it's got to be the balls coming and playing through Jayden Short. So I think this is how it's going to look for Richmond. I think that's the big move, and we'll talk about the fantasy impacts for both Short and Rioli in a moment. For the Gold Coast Suns, they have come out in multiple ways this offseason and made a statement. We need more run and carry off halfback. We saw them at various times last season looking at players like Sam Flanders, Will Powell, to a lesser extent a Connor Buderick, and probably the most well-known, certainly in the fantasy circles, was Alex Sexton. Clearly they wanted some speed and skill off halfback, and with the moves that they are wanting to do through the off-season, with the targets and players they've recruited, they're clearly going after players with speed, skill, all off that halfback. That seems to be the area that they have identified as the greatest area of growth. So for Richmond, getting a Daniel Rioli, it helps tick all of these boxes, and it gives them some speed and skill across halfback. And clearly, he's going to be the primary ball mover from a run and carry perspective and a distribution perspective. So to me, I think this is a really handy get for the Suns. Politely, yeah, they've given up a fair bit of draft capital, but do they need another early draft pick? Another academy guy this year, let alone next year as well. And so really draft capital, especially the pick that was the centerpiece for this deal, it really doesn't matter to Richmond. You know, it's huge, but to the Suns, it's nothing. They got the player. They've got what they need. I think they're pretty happy with it.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial.
No. Don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
What does this mean from a fantasy footy perspective? Well, before we talk about Daniel, let's talk about the players around that this impacts. It means those that have been used in that distribution or heavy ball facilitation role off halfback for the Gold Coast Suns. I don't want any piece of them anytime soon. So someone such as a Will Powell, well, as great as he is at a lot of different things, he's not going to be the distributor. And so any kind of value or relevance he had, probably more draft than classic, absolutely fades away. Sam Flanders, who is a little bit of the Liam Baker type role for Damien Hardwick this year. And what I mean by that is sometimes half forward, sometimes inside mid, sometimes distributor and halfback. Probably means Sam Flanders goes back to a little bit more heavy mid-forward split. Despite him, I think he's going to have defensive status for us in AFL Fantasy Supercoach and Dream Team next year. So that could be handy. But it probably means we're not going to see him getting that freedom of easy ball across half-back, taking the kick-ins, things like that. So from a Gold Coast perspective, it means I'm probably just fading a touch of interest given how much I expect the ball to be facilitated in and around through Daniel Rioli. From a Richmond perspective, yeah, we're getting to Dan, I know. I've already mentioned it, but I think this is a great move for Jayden Short. This year didn't go his way, but the ball has to, in my eyes, get played through him. Richmond, I feel, are probably going to be worse, feels an understatement given the players they're losing. I know some are saying, but look at these guys that are coming back from longer term injuries. Sure, but it's balanced out by the departures that they've had from their club this offseason. So as much experience and skill and presence that's coming back into their team through injuries, should they maintain health and fitness, they've seen departed with arguably more durable players. So it's got to be Jayden Short in my eyes. Like I've said, I know there could be some other kids that get opportunities, but if they're going to really try to stem the bleeding, at least for this next year, Jayden Short has to elevate himself and pick up even more of the pieces of the puzzle, which is great because there's some value built into him because of some injury, some ball that wasn't played through him as much. It went through Rioli. We could see him take some more kick-ins, get some more of that plum scoring, intercept possessions, some really easy uncontested marks in the switch. He could absolutely get back towards pushing that 100 average that he has done over a previous few years. So to me, Jayden Short is the huge winner here out of this Daniel Rioli from a fantasy footy implication. For Dan himself, look, he had a career best year last year, and that's why he won the club best and fairest. An average in the low 90s in SuperCoach, 135 was his top score last year. 8 SuperCoach tons, 4 AFL Fantasy and Dream Team tons, a mid-80s average, and also a 135 score. So he's got ceiling, he's got some consistency about him, and it probably means that he needs to take himself to the next level should he be fantasy relevant for us in 2025 in Classic. It means he needs even more of the domination of the ball to come through him, which is possible when you look at some of the scoring that Sam Flanders and Will Powell had at times on the Gold Coast Suns this year. He really needs to elevate his scoring 10 points per game from that low 80s in AFL Fantasy and low 90s in SuperCoach. We need a 10 points per game jump to make him someone you want to own in Classic and to maximize the value in your starting squad. His role is without question rebounder, run and carry, key distribution by hand and by foot predominantly off this Gold Coast back line. If you think he's got the ball funneling through him, which I do, there's a very considerable pathway and narrative to see him getting that 10 points per game of jump, which does make him now not just a guy that is a decent D2, maybe D3 in certain fields. But now it becomes, well, this guy could be a top 10 defender if all the things work for him, which they absolutely could. So at the very least, Dan Rioli needs to be a watch list for your salary cap formats in 2025. It's not a high watch list by any means at all, but what it does mean is at the very, very least, you should be getting Dan Rioli, putting him in your coaches panel pre-season planner book and making a decision that it's like, I'm just going to watch. I want to see how does the Gold Coast Suns move this ball in and around through Daniel Rioli. Because if he can get that 10 points per game jump, well, he moves from just being a draft relevant guy to be someone that just has enough fat on the bone that you can pick at maybe D3 in your starting squad and sneak him in there. I'm not hugely hot on it, but gosh, it's October. We should at least be considering it. I think there's a potential big upside space here for Daniel Rioli, and his move to the Suns. Not only could it be a great fantasy pickup for him, but it could and should be a huge fantasy boost for Jayden Short. But do you agree or disagree on my take about Dan Rioli's trade move to the Gold Coast Suns? If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and give this video a thumbs up. But comment below and let me know, what do you think Dan Rioli is going to average this year in fantasy footy? If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give a 5-star rating, and comment and let us know what you think he's going to average this year. In the description of this video are all the links where you can get in touch with us across social media, become part of our Patreon, and get your hands and be among the first to look good in the Coaches Panel merch. And we'll be back again real soon, looking at another player that's moved clubs this trade and free agency period.